Alright everyone, this is the video for Algebra section 11, solving equations and inequalities. In this video I'll give an overview of the topic, I'll then go through the worksheet, and finally I'll answer the questions that are given on the worksheet. The description box below gives a link to my Instagram page. On here you can find images of the worksheet as well as the answer sheet and other bits and bobs. All the other algebra topics I've taught before this point have all been leading you to this video. Therefore, if you're not that confident with some of those topics, or you haven't looked at them on my site or anywhere else, then I'd probably advise going and checking those out, specifically the topics on rearranging, factorizing quadratics. I did 2 parts to that. Completing the square, and the topic on inequalities. If you've nailed all them, you've pretty much nailed this topic as well. It's just like a little cherry on top extra. Right, to solve an equation or inequality is to find the value or values that satisfy what the equation or inequality is telling you. For instance, if we had the equation 2 times by y is equal to 4, this equation is telling you that if you multiply y by 2, you get 4. The solution to this equation is the value of y, i.e. it is the number that when multiplied by 2 is equal to 4. Well, it's quite easy to see that if y is equal to 2, then this satisfies the equation. Now, that was quite a basic equation. What if we had something like 3 minus 4x squared is equal to 2x? That's a bit more complicated. You could probably sit here and like rattle through values of x and try and see when the left hand side is equal to the right hand side. But that's gonna like take you some time, and in an exam you don't have that time. No, like nah. So what you can do, you can carry on watching this video and I can show you how to solve that equation really quickly using a lot of skills that you already know from previous algebra topics. So let's go. Alright, this is the worksheet for Algebra section 11, solving equations and inequalities. Like I said in the introduction, you already have most of the skills needed for this section. However, there is some extra learning needed to find the solutions. Let's go ahead and look at this first section. Here you'll see that just rearranging some equations or inequalities can lead you to the solution. For instance, here in this example, we are told that 2x minus 5 is equal to 1. In order to solve this, we need to get the subject on one side of the equal sign and everything else on the other side. Well, you should already know how to do this from my video on rearranging. We take all the non-subject terms to the right hand side and we keep the subject on the left hand side. So here we would take this 5 across to this side. That's done in this step. Next is to get x on its own. So we divide both sides by 2. So here we get x is equal to 6 over 2. Therefore the solution is x is equal to 3. We can check that this is the correct answer by putting it back into the original equation. So if x is equal to 3, this becomes 2 times 3, which is 6. So we get 6 here and we have minus 5. 6 minus 5 is 1. So the original equation becomes 1 equals 1. Well, that makes sense to me. What if we'd gone wrong somewhere along the line down here? What if we actually had x is equal to 2? Well, then we'd go back to our original equation and we'd say, all right, if x is 2, then this becomes 2 times 2, which is 4. Then we've got minus 5. So we get 4 minus 5, which becomes minus 1. So then we'd have the original equation saying minus 1 is equal to 1. Which just doesn't make sense, so it should ring alarm bells that you've gone wrong somewhere. If the original equation doesn't make sense with the solution that you found, your solution's wrong. Okay, what about this example on the right? Here we have a third x squared is less than or equal to 3. Again, we can just rearrange. We need to get x on its own. So we times both sides by 3, which is done here. And then we need to get rid of this power of 2. To get rid of the power of 2, we square root both sides. Remember, if you're square rooting, you have to put this plus or minus sign here. I've gone through this in another video. Square root of 9 is 3, so we get x is less than or equal to plus or minus 3. This can be split out here. So here we don't have one solution for x. We actually have a range of solutions. We have x is greater than or equal to minus 3 and x is less than or equal to 3. Once again, we can check these solutions are correct by putting values of x back into our original inequality. So if we take x as minus 3, which is a correct solution, this inequality becomes 1 over 3 times by minus 3 squared. Minus 3 squared is 9, so we get 9 divided by 3. So this side, this left-hand side, becomes 3. So the original inequality reads 3 is less than or equal to 3, which is true. So that's a fine solution. Same if you put 3 back in here. If 3 is in here, again you get 9 divided by 3, which becomes 3. So we get 3 is less than or equal to 3, which makes sense. What about if we choose a number within this range? What if we choose minus 2, say? If x is minus 2, this here becomes 1 over 3 times by minus 2 squared, which is 4 over 3, which is about 1.3. So this original inequality reads 1.3 is less than or equal to 3, which is true. So that's fine. That's a fine solution. How about we try something wrong? Suppose we had x equal to minus 4. Going back to our original inequality, if we put minus 4 in here, we get 16 divided by 3, which is about 5.3. So the original inequality would read 5.3 is less than or equal to 3, which is totally wrong. So we know that can't be a solution, which is fine because we don't have it as a solution. Therefore, I'm pretty happy that this is correct. So these are just examples on how we can rearrange to find solutions of equations or inequalities. Okay, next section, factorizing to solve. From here on, we're only going to be dealing with solving equations now. We're going to get rid of inequalities. They're like pesky buggers, and I'm just going to go over those in a subject later on, probably when I'm doing not algebra, but graph subjects, so we'll come back to those. So, in general, if you see an x squared term and an x term in an equation, then you're probably going to need to factorize to solve. Let's look at this example here. We have an x squared and we have an x, therefore we're going to need to factorize. Remember, in order to factorize, all we do is find letters and or numbers that occur in each term, and we pull them out and put them on the outside of the bracket. So here we find that 2 occurs in both terms and x occurs in both terms. So we've factorised by bringing this 2x on the outside, and we get x plus 2 on the inside. So we have 2x times by bracketed x plus 2, and this is equal to 0. Now here comes the bit you need to remember. This equation here is telling you that 2x times by bracketed x plus 2 is equal to 0. 0 is a really interesting number or concept. If you ever go on to university maths, you'll find that some people don't even class 0 as a number. That's why I said a concept. Now you should know that anything multiplied by 0 is 0. 10 times by 0 is 0. Apples times by 0 is 0. 10 million times by 0 is 0. And 0 times by 0 is still 0. You get the picture. So here we're saying that 2x times by bracketed x plus 2 is 0. Therefore, 2x could be 0 and bracketed x plus 2 could be 0. By utilising this knowledge, we can split this up here. We can say, oh, 2x is 0 and x plus 2 is 0. Now we just need to rearrange to find out what x is. So here, x is 0, and this side, x is equal to minus 2. These are the two solutions to this equation here. You can put these values back into this equation here, and you'll find they satisfy this equation. This example here uses the same techniques, except here we've got an actual quadratic, i.e. when we factorise we get 2 brackets. Instead of having a term on the outside of a bracket, see here we have 2 brackets. Again, you should know how to do this from a previous video. So once we get to this stage, which you know, we again utilise the knowledge about 0. We could have 3x minus 1 is equal to 0, and we have x plus 1 is equal to 0. Rearranging these two, we get down to x is equal to 1/3 and x is equal to minus 1. These are the two solutions to this quadratic here. Now, if we can't rearrange or factorise, then another method we could use is completing the square. Again, we've gone over completing the square in another video. Let's look at this example here. We have a quadratic. This can be put into completed square form, and it is bracketed x minus 1 squared minus 3 is equal to 0. Now, to get a solution from this bit, all we have to do is some rearranging, which you already know. So we bring the 3 to this side, it goes from a minus to a plus. Now we need to get rid of this power, so we square root both sides. So this side becomes bracketed x minus 1 is equal to, remember, your plus or minus, square root of 3. Now we can take this minus 1 term over to the other side. So we get x is equal to 1 plus or minus root 3. Therefore, the two solutions to this original quadratic are x is equal to 1 plus root 3 and x is equal to 1 minus root 3. One tip with completing the square: if these square roots are ones you can simplify, i.e. if you get, say, the square root of 4, you know the square root of 4 is 2, i.e. the square root simplifies, then if that happens, you could actually have just factorised. Let's look at a second example of completing the square. Here again we have a quadratic. The completed square form of this quadratic is 2 times by bracketed x plus 3 squared minus 6. Again, let's find the solutions. All you have to do after this point is just rearrange. We bring the 6 over, we divide both sides by 2, we get rid of the power 2 by square rooting both sides, and then we bring the 3 across. So we have the solutions: x is equal to minus 3 plus root 3 and x is equal to minus 3 minus root 3. These square roots aren't nice, i.e. they aren't squares such as 4, 9, 16, 25. Therefore, you couldn't have found these solutions easily from factorising. So we know how to find solutions by completing the square, factorising and rearranging. Is there any other method? Well, there is one, which is using the quadratic formula. So if you have a quadratic of this form, ax squared plus bx plus c, you could always just use this formula. Let's just look at a quick example of this. So we have solve 4x squared minus 12x plus 3. This quadratic is in the form of this quadratic, and here this a here is equal to 4, b is equal to minus 12, and this c here is equal to 3. And what you do with this a, b and c that you found is you just plug it into this formula here and you'll get to a solution. And the solutions to this quadratic is x is equal to 3 plus root 6 divided by 2 and x is equal to 3 minus root 6 divided by 2. They're all the methods to solving equations so far. It's probably a good idea to pause the video as usual, make a brew, try out these questions here, come back to the video and check your answers compared to my answers and my workings to your workings, and just make sure we're all singing from the same hymn sheet. You don't want to hear me sing. Cheers!